Hello everyone, welcome to Simulation. I'm your host Alan Sakian. Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Dan Gailey.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Dan is the founder of Synapse AI. They are a decentralized AI network, and we'll be talking a lot about decentralization, the AI economy, and what this all means today and for the future.
Yep.
So your background, very interdisciplinary.
Yep.
I didn't think there would be some chemistry and some robotics and some oil and gas.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah.
Walk us through some of it.
So I grew up just programming, right? I started programming when I was about 10 years old. I think I'm the black sheep. My father was a lawyer, my mother was a nurse. I just saw computers as like this amazing new thing, right? Grew up in the hacking and phreaking scene, so went into a chat room somewhere and asked somebody to teach me how to hack, right? Which is like the most naive question, like who can teach me how to hack? And somebody actually just taught me how to program. And so they kind of tricked me into that, and which is the best trick I've ever had pulled on me. And from there, I ended up skipping a grade, graduating, and going into research and development in the telecom industry. So I had a friend that his father owned a telecom company, and he asked me if I was still hacking, in essence, and I was like, sure, and went to go work there.
In Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
And then, this is so great. So, okay, so your involvement in computer science and hacking was kind of a foundation for you moving forward. And then what else led you to the sort of idea of wanting to get involved in decentralization and the AI economy?
So, after, in my early 20s, I had like a punk rock band and I hosted a poetry night, and there was a lot of like self-discovery happening. I ended up going back to school and basically doing electrical engineering with a focus in autonomous robotics, and computational chemistry was another one of my degrees. And so I got exposed to machine learning models and basic models of computation, as well as robotics, right? Machine learning models through that. And from there, I decided to move out to San Francisco. And
what was that? Because I'm always fascinated by the reasons why people decide to make the move.
So I grew up on IRC. All of my friends were on IRC is a chat, right? And it's kind of the precursor to what Slack is now and things like that. And all my friends in the hacking scene were already in the Bay Area. So I knew I was going to move out here eventually, right? And when it finally came time and I felt like I had all the tools that I wanted to have to come out here, I just decided, okay, well, this is the next step. And funny enough, I was like, okay, I could either be a stand-up comedian in New York and try out for SNL, because I like to consider myself a funny guy, right? Or just move out to Silicon Valley and do my own thing. So that was like the crossroads.
Yeah.
And I flipped the quarter and it was like, build the future of everything. Yeah, but I can make people laugh along the way. So
yeah, that's great.
It's funny.
Crucial skill for people skills.
Yeah.
So, all right. So tell us about you. What year was that you came out here, and how did you decide to found companies, and what was the first one, second one? Yeah.
The year was 2010. And I basically packed up my Honda Civic with everything that I could fit inside of it, and I didn't have a place to stay, a job lined up, and I think I had like $2,000 in my bank account, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I moved out here and immediately got my first job, and the whole catalyst was, I've always wanted to build my own software company. I know it's like, what do you ask, children what they want to be when they grow up? Mine was like an inventor, or like, I want to own a software company. My heroes were kind of the Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, right, of that era, because that's what I grew up in. And so I knew that's what I wanted to do, right? And I didn't know to what effect, but I knew this is a place where it happens. And so I came out here and basically sold my car, had another $4 grand, right? So, but in San Francisco, that's like 2 months of living, right? Yeah. And I ended up renting a room and decided that if I'm going to build something, I should learn how to build startups first, right? I should learn how to grow companies. And so I got a job, and my job was basically like normalization of entities online. And I think the next best thing that compares to was like MetaWeb that Google bought. So they would basically scrape all the entities online and like build ontologies of people, places, and things, right? And that was my first job out here.
Cool.
Previously, I had been an intern at the National Center for Physical Acoustics building sensors for nuclear weapons testing around the world. Yeah, so it was pretty exciting, but software is where I belong, right, ultimately. And then hung out in that first startup for a little bit. It was really cool, got to do a lot of like cutting edge stuff, and decided that I wanted to try my own thing. Like a lot of people trying something big for the first time, it often explodes in your face, which is, which is a good thing. I think if you're not trying and things should fail spectacularly if they are to fail in any way, right? So that was, we were doing one big menu because at the time I was like, the world is one big menu and I want to find the best tiramisu in the world, right? So the whole impetus for this was just to find the best tiramisu in the world. So I wanted to give like dish level reviews, and I think Food Spotting was an app that was out at the time that just had launched. So they were kind of in the same space, and that just like fell apart because team, and there's so many parameters that go into executing not just on an idea, but also to carry the company, that you learn a lot of lessons while you're building these things, right?
Yeah.
And
entrepreneur's the best thing you'll ever do.
Simultaneously the worst thing. It's been, you be careful what you wish for, but you'll never feel more rewarded doing anything else, I think, right? So there's a lot of great lessons, but when you've learned your lessons and you've graduated to learning bigger lessons, you kind of have the ability to take a look back and go, wow, like look how far I've come in this amount of time, right? So I think ultimately the lesson there is just to keep trying. Right? But I moved to the Valley and there were two things on my mind. One, I'll never build social networks, right? Two, I'll never build AI. Yeah. I thought I was like, okay, this is a thing. And this was before it was really popular. And we were still kind of in a big winter for that. Even though personally I love statistics and I love data science and whatever other kind of terminologies that people came up to talk about machine learning and AI without actually talking about it, right? But I kind of felt like there was a lot of kind of navel gazing at the time, with like more armchair kind of ideas of what could be possible had we had AI, as opposed to building it, right? So I ended up running the San Francisco Hacker News meetup, and
Hacker News.
Hacker News is Y Combinator's kind of site, right? It's like their version of Reddit.
It's a cool site.
It is. It serves a very particular demographic, right? Which is like the hacker, for its namesake, right? And the entrepreneur, and they kind of help critique as best as possible one another's work, and it's where you find out a lot about the latest of what's happening, right? Funny story is, before I moved out here, I applied to be the co-founder of Uber, which was funny story, and that's maybe a different story. So coming out here, I ran the San Francisco Hacker News meetup, and that's where I got exposed to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular. So in the intermediary, I was like, kind of running my own startups and trying to figure that out. So my second startup was a social network. It was like legitimately, when you're riding a bike trying not to hit a tree, the only thing you're going to hit is that tree, right? So I in essence looked back and said, okay, what skills do I have? What problems have I seen? And being right out of college, immediately I had tried to, you know, fix those problems, right? So I was head of our robotics team, and we went to competition, and I made an
in college or
yes,
in college.
yeah,
Cool,
yeah.
cool.
And I also started my high school computer club too. So
nice.
yeah, nerd cred, right?
Nerd cred, yeah.
You know, I looked back and I saw that the teams that had the most funding were the teams that did well. You know, they were able to create more experiments, and they just had more resources ultimately. So the first network that I built was called Schoolyard, and it was a way for alumni to connect with students to crowdfund, essentially, continuously crowdfund student projects, right?
Yep.
And student groups. And
It's crucial.
it is.
Yep, for actually being able to tinker and invent into the world to get the funding from alumni mentors.
Right.
Yep.
And you can also use that as a kind of a springboard into your own career, and you know, you can keep everyone in the loop with what is actually happening at their alma mater. So
Yep.
I think
how is that doing? Or is it still?
Oh no, it's dead.
It's dead.
Yeah.
So a couple of the things you built are dead. Couple are still alive and thriving.
For every one thing I launched, there was like 100 things that never
Dead.
made it out of. You know, it was just like I'm pretty much a machine when it comes to like ideas and building stuff, right? But fundamentally, over time, you start trying to observe the reason for building, and you have more time to think about the impact of how you're spending your time.
Yep.
Right. So I built a couple of these things. I ended up working in venture capital as an EIR, entrepreneur in resident.
Yep.
And my job was basically to facilitate deal flow for crypto companies.
Cool.
Right. This was 2013, I think. And we went out, and I basically had the opportunity to meet some of the brightest people that were deciphering what crypto meant and what decentralization meant and what just the impact of all of this on the future was, right? Yep. And I made a bunch of friends and went out to the first Bitcoin conference in San Jose. Really great, you know, the Winklevoss twins were just walking around. Coinbase had just started. I had a meeting, funny enough, I had a meeting with Brian, CEO of Coinbase, because he posted on Hacker News if somebody was interested in co-founding a new cryptocurrency exchange. And it came to be Coinbase, which was cool.
Yep.
So you had all these like early players that were just like figuring out where they fit.
Yep.
Right? And then I worked in venture capital, and I took a step back, and I kind of looked at my research and looked at where crypto was headed, and we started talking about these things in terms of programmatic money, right? In machine money terms, right? What happens not just when humans are trading these things, but when you have these commodities and resources and assets that these agents have agency over, and they're able to transact with one another, right? Through cryptocurrency. So I started investigating that and thinking about that.
Yep.
And I think simultaneously I threw a hackathon called Hack Endo, and it was about getting companies out. So I've done a ton, right? So getting companies out that had IoT applications and devices, and talking about kind of more what happens when we have these services, right? And what emergent products we can build when we start mashing these things up.
Yep.
So really starting to think about multi-agent systems, heterogeneous systems, and how they can transact with one another and contract one another, and facilitate this kind of ambient intelligent world. That led to, that's the good stuff. That's when I'm sitting back and I'm like, oh, if where we're at now is me and my devices, right, and how they work together, then in the future, where we'll be is me and my devices, you and your devices, and how they all talk and work together. Right? And that kind of brings in this idea of the sharing economy and And when machines and sensors can talk in this open kind of ecosystem and garden of devices and oceans of sensor data and models that are being built. And came out with something called Playa, which this is like super insider info, came out with something called Playa and had to pitch this idea of connecting all these things. This is like pre-Ethereum, right? I think connecting all these things in a very decentralized way, right? So that you can contract resources out. Mm-hmm. And the example that I gave, I was actually asked to pitch at a conference, and they picked me out as one of the best of the demo pit kind of crew, and came out to pitch, and I said, well, in the future, and anytime you start like that conversation of in the future when you're talking to investors, they're already like, okay, so you don't have anything ready right now, right? And I said, well, in the future, you'll step out of your autonomous vehicle. It'll look for recharge. It'll try to find a recharging station. It'll negotiate a recharge on your behalf, and then it'll contract itself out as an Uber.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a great example.
Right.
Yeah.
And it'll make money while you sleep. Right?
Yep.
So that was a really great example, especially after many, many, many nights of thinking about how to phrase this or how to even speak about these things to people. And I remember the judges very distinctly saying, you're either crazy or you're a genius, and we're not sure which. And I step off stage.
All geniuses start crazy. Right. And then everyone's like, damn, they were right.
Right. And I step off stage, and my friend goes, why can't you be both? And I'm just like, great, thank you, I appreciate it. But when I got back to my booth, you know, I think this VP of IoT at Cisco came up to me, and representatives from NTT Docomo, from GE, all of these huge, the Department of Defense, all of these huge companies and huge firms were already thinking about this, right? Mm-hmm. And figuring out what that future is going to start looking like, so that they can start building the infrastructure and support for it. Yep. So that was kind of one of the moments where I was just like,
yeah,
like the aha, like
moment,
I'm not alone.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
that's a huge sign when the multinational conglomerates are approaching you and saying that, right. Oh, we're also thinking about this field in the future. They're
right, also, right, in the future, right, yeah.
So it was time to capitalize now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I went back to some of my friends in venture capital, and I was like, look, this is going to be what's happening next. Like, I just know it. And they say, cool, we have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, great. What do I do? You gave them that simple example, and then they should be like, okay, I guess that makes sense. And yeah. The autonomous vehicle has to know how to negotiate with the charging station on behalf of behalf, how to go and pick up passengers and make you money while you're not using it. Right.
And these things, I think, resonate more with people when you give them these really solid examples of how machines need to interact with other machines and do it in a safe way on your behalf. Yeah, in a way that's logged. We'll get to all that, but I think that simple idea of you going back and not being able to get to somebody, I always wonder if there's a way to tell the story that could get to that person or those people.
I know. I wish, and I think that just happens over time. Like you tell your story in so many different ways to so many different people. You start to pattern match what kind of, you classify the type of person and how they'll respond to a particular story, right? So you learn to tell like different narratives to different audiences so that they can begin to understand and connect those dots along with you, right? So I ended up going back to my venture capital friends, and they were just like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, but $1 trillion company, right? Like, whatever piques their interest, right?
A unicorn.
Right. And so what do I do? I go back and I build another social network, right?
What?
Yeah, so I built something called Backer, where like people who are crazy or geniuses or both could put up their projects and build communities and build audiences, so that when they go to launch products, they have built-in audiences, right?
Right there, along lines of like Kickstarter and Indiegogo.
Yeah. So you had continuous crowdfunding, and you had Kickstarter-esque models inside of it.
Yep.
And it was just like, I basically mashed up everything that I've ever learned from entrepreneurship and building product into one product.
Yeah.
Which was just like a beast.
Yeah.
It was like, Well, one of my friends was like, when are you going to stop building features, right? Like, I was just like, okay, cool. And when I was like working on the newsletter feature for like, yeah, it was a good time. And
Still around?
It is still up, yeah. BAQQER.
Yep.
Somebody asked me why I picked that name. I said because the domain was available.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then working on that, we start going through, okay, now I have what I think is a license to just start building what I want to build, right? Where I kind of look at this as like a way to tell my story while I'm building these things. And we start out with one of my friends who, Adam Gibson, who does Deep Learning 4J, said, Playa looks cool, but people want something to play with, right? So I ended up starting to work on a prototype for a wearable bot platform, right? Imagine like Alexa or Google Home or what now Watson, I guess, but in a wearable form that has like a camera and sensors and hears everything you hear, sees everything you see, and starts documenting things, right? And so we're prototyping that out, and we have our backend, which is also cryptocurrency, right? So how you participate on the network, you can build applications and bots where people are kind of creating this economy, this wearable data acquisition economy with crypto as a backend, right? So now humans are kind of in this human in the loop data acquisition kind of role. And we went to, this was before bots as a term became popular, which we were using because previously bots as a term was very like a nefarious thing, right? You had like voting bots and you had, you know, just like DDoS bots and whatever. They were bad. It was a bad thing to label something a bot. So we were using the term autonomous intelligent agent, which, I mean, will put anyone to sleep immediately. Like, so we went to, and then Facebook did their bots thing, and we went to the bots community, and we said, hey, look at this wearable, cool bot platform that has a crypto background. This is before crypto was even big, right? People were like, cool, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, we're like, okay. And we had to take a step back and like, how can we roll something like this out in phases? Or even how can we abstract out the best bits of this and build it into a network or a platform that people can participate in on their own and make it kind of like their own. So we wanted to become, instead of the front end like iPhone or Google Home, we wanted to become the more like Twilio, right? Or platform or network, where we're an intermediary and we kind of unlock all these things horizontally for everyone else to take advantage of. So that's how we came up with Synapse. We basically abstracted out all the good stuff, which was the data and the machine learning models and the decentralized network and the crypto portion. And we luckily enough were able to bootstrap on top of Ethereum. And so if you have any background in crypto, you understand that Ethereum offers smart contracts, is kind of has event-driven, is an event-driven network where you can kind of delegate services in some respects. So you have a bunch of different features that what we're building kind of just fits right in. And it unlocks the ability to connect resources through a marketplace, right, through the network. So we've been using the narrative of if automation is coming, right, if it's already here and it is also going to take over more, then we should participate, right? We should participate, and because of data lineage and because of provenance, we should get rewarded, right, when these models that we go to train get leveraged. So that was basically what we started with. And now I think the conversation is more revolved around, we have access to data, we have access to machine learning model, we have all these resources, and we kind of built this foundation, and then we realized, oh, there are even more emergent qualities, right, that appear when you enable these things. So because we innovated this AI blockchain thing, we're able to not just answer old questions, right, but ask new ones. which has been fascinating. Like, because you have provenance, because you have data lineage, and you can see who has access to what and when and how, you can create meta models, right, of how the network works and provide network optimizations globally, which starts to look like a global autonomous logistics and supply chain.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's been one of my favorite things to try and better understand about the way the world works, is where things actually come from, how they are actually made, how they get to you, where you go get them from, when you consume them, what happens to them afterward, that whole process. And
we can do that now. We can literally do that by leveraging this network, right? And
maybe we should chunk this up
Sure.
time, piece by piece.
Sure.
All right, so let's go with a first piece. The first piece, let's talk about decentralization and blockchain technology. So you had started this at eVentures. You were going and trying to get more people more excited about this, fund the right companies. So in 2013, there were a good amount of people talking about the importance of decentralization, the importance of cryptocurrency, the importance of these things, and only one of, probably the biggest application is cryptocurrency of decentralization, but there's so many other really important applications to decentralization. So centralization being the way that you go into a bank and the bank controls all of your funds and the bank has their own digital ledger and nobody else accesses the digital ledger, versus a decentralization where as a massive network of computers are all keeping the digital ledger in a way that incentivizes them to keep it properly. And so you having the opportunity to see that 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, and now seeing it growing to the point that it is, you kind of saw the moment of capitalization where you're going to see all of these machines needing to talk to each other. And so you plugged right into the Ethereum the Ethereum network, the Ethereum blockchains, and how those machines will be talking to each other, all of the different services and applications that are using the Ethereum technology. So let's go through maybe some of the examples Synapse is currently being used by, the way that Synapse is helping other companies and organizations.
Yeah, so the first feature is access control. Right, so if you announce a service or have some access to data, you can write the rules by which you would like people to access your data or resources on the blockchain.
And that's even the first one, access control. Right now, I mean, a really good example I think people will resonate with is when they give access to people to gain part control over their Facebook page.
Right.
You get to give them admin access, you can give them just posting access, you can give them just X access, Y access, etc. down the chain of command. So access control is already really interesting to the data. So how much of my personal data about my heart rate and my other biometrics should a physician be able to access about me?
Right.
Things like this.
Right. So you can kind of participate in that way where you're doing one-on-one transactions with your data or your resources more abstractly, or you can participate in contract fulfillment. So you could say, like, these things are the things that I'm willing to give away, right, for particular research purposes or even for monetary capitalization. So
I'm willing to sell my data,
correct.
or I'm willing to give it for research purposes, but only this much access control. So
right, right. So we're thinking about both your biometric data, your genome, right, all of your omic data,
yep.
But also your transactional history, like anything that can be quantified in any way.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we're just shedding that constantly.
Constantly.
Right, so.
One of my favorite quotes from over a year ago now, David Ewing Duncan. The second greatest invention of mankind is all of the data that we leave behind. And the first greatest invention of mankind is yet to be created, and that's how do we analyze that data and make it applicable to our lives.
Right.
And for example, with giving access control for financial records or access control for research organizations at Stanford or MIT, wherever, to be able to use that for building a better future. That seems like something that's like a no-brainer. Like you already give all of your access control on your iPhone and on your MacBook and on all these different services on Facebook, Twitter, that you already give them. You don't even read the agreement. Why not also, read the agreement and give a certain amount of access so that we can make healthcare better, finances better, location data for maybe police stations or for where we need to build the next roads or build the next hospitals or education institutes, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole concept that these companies embody now, the vertical, right, is a monopoly around the data, because if they can monopolize the data, then they can monopolize the models that go to create the data. But unfortunately, because they're monopolies and they are businesses, they have a very targeted demographic.
Centralization.
Which requires them to participate in targeted demographics, which creates biased data, which creates biased models. And so if you have a way to participate in kind of creating a horizontal marketplace for this data, then you can create more robust, more representative models.
Something that I really wanted to get involved in was just an idea like a year or more ago, something called like Researcher, where people could give away biometric data, either for charity or also for money to earn themselves. And this is also an idea for universal basic income as well. Does my data contain enough monetary value for me to give away to earn $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month? The answer is probably yes, but right now the problem is all your data that you own of yourself on Facebook, all of the data that you own of yourself on your Google account, all the data you own of yourself on all your physician records, all the stuff is centralized in those separate locations, and you don't get any monetary ability to tap into them and give.
Yeah, it's kind of, you do because the service is free, right? Like that's how you pay for it.
That's how you pay for Facebook.
But it's interesting because they're able to collect so much data, and once they build their models, they kind of throw that data away. And it's your data, you generated it, it's data about you, and you should be able to take that anywhere you want to. And I think the EU is doing a really good job by, they're going through with GDPR, which is data protection rights, and they basically say that people have to participate in data in such a way that the user owns it and can take their data from service to service.
What do you think about that?
I think it's fantastic.
GDPR.
GDPR. Yeah, General Data Protection Rights, I think. Yeah.
GDPR.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get there, because that's really fascinating, you had mentioned diversity in data being really important, and I didn't want to miss that because that is so crucial. When you do get so many people from around the world contributing their data to a pool, it gives you easier ability for these randomized, controlled trials to be able to produce a better world, and then without biased data sets.
Right.
Yeah.
Because biased data builds biased models, which perpetuate the bias implied in the data. Right. So you see that there's a good book, and it's called, I think, darn, I just forgot it. But it basically talks about how data is used to perpetuate the worst of machine intelligence, right, and the worst of our society, because it exists to reflect that, right? It's sampling that, and it's perpetuating that, and it's kind of insightful to see that needs to be the reason to decentralize it all, right? That needs to be the reason to create a horizontal marketplace, to create the ability to query and have everyone participate in a very democratic way to contributing data, to building machine intelligence.
You use the word horizontal marketplace.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I have never heard of that. I like that.
Yeah.
That seems to be the answer, not the vertical marketplaces, because there's, why would Facebook have any incentive to talk to Google so that when you're in flow doing something that you don't get bing, bing, binged messaged?
Right.
There's no incentive between a bank to talk to your hospital, to talk to your educational institution,
Right.
but there's so much beautiful data fusion that could happen across those platforms.
Yeah, and we talk about it horizontally because I view it very horizontally. When we set out, we wanted to be the data and intelligence layer in this new stack that's getting built. So this new stack, Web3, that encompasses democratization, decentralization, and distributed storage and compute, it's all very horizontal, right? And I think horizontal marketplaces represent everyone equally, but also like when we imagine it, it is something that will exist in every device, in every sensor, all around the world, right? So we use that phrase because it matters and it means something. And once you're able to create this horizontal marketplace, people can participate however they like to, all around the world, right? And it takes the focus less on the ownership of the data from a company's perspective to how can we build real utility from this data?
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what's important, finding the utility.
Right,
Yeah.
and correlating that data between verticals, right?
Yep.
As well as, then we can start talking about, well, okay, this is great, we're talking about data, but what about resources, right? What about machine learning models? What about autonomous agents on this network where you can have your Google Home starting to talk to your Alexa because they have a web of trust now and they can contract one another, and you have control of your data and your transactional history and your preferences and the models about you
So
that they can
this is the
access.
AI economy plus the general data privacy rights together.
Right.
Okay, so let's unpack this. This is going to be very cool.
Yeah.
So first of all, this general data privacy rights, this seems to be the future, is ownership of data, not by the vertical marketplaces, but by the horizontal marketplace. So I tap in, I give access control of how much I want in, and then the AI economy will, depending on which exact aspect of the AI economy I want to tap into, with an autonomous cars example or any of these different examples. Let's tell us more about how exactly those are going to play in my access control and then the AI economy. You were kind of going into some of those examples.
Yeah, so you need data to train models. That's it. That's the biggest problem with machine learning today, right? People go, oh great, you want to start a machine learning company, you have no access to data, right? And that's the monopoly. That's why these companies want to own everything down to the last mile, down to your phone, down to your home, right? There's no real sharing because sharing means they don't have an advantage anymore, right? And so if we're able to create this horizontal marketplace and we're able to participate in the ways that we're talking about, now the data is open. Right, and not open in a way that it means unsecured or not private, but open in that it's addressable.
Yeah.
Right, and so now you're able to perform contract fulfillment to train these models to actually access an entire globe full of data. Like Google can't do that alone. Amazon can't do that alone. Facebook can't do that alone. Right. So we're unlocking this whole new resource and potential of people participating in a brand new way to train bigger, more robust models, which is fascinating.
It is, but you need to get the big players behind it.
You do, and they are.
They are?
Yeah.
Willing to work together?
So I won't mention anything, but we have some pretty big companies. We just threw the Decentralized AI Summit here in February. We had everyone from Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Samsung, Qualcomm, NVIDIA. I mean, the big players, the independent researchers that are thinking about decentralized AI in very particular verticals like healthcare. We had people who were just working in AI exclusively come out and start talking about this is the way that we can start implementing these pieces on the network and how we're applying AI now, and it was a huge success, right? We actually started a month beforehand. I was like, you know what we should do? we should throw a conference. And much to everyone that works with me's dismay, they were like, okay, when does it need to get done? In 30 days? Great. And we pulled it off. We had over 375 attendees. And this was at the Fairmont Hotel. We had a packed day of just killer. We had the founder of the SETI program, Search for Extraterrestrial.
He cares a lot about SETI in general cares a lot about figuring out how to leverage AI to better find life in the universe, and NASA really needs that for their exoplanet data. There's a lot and there's a distributed compute layer component too, which is really exciting. Cool. Because if we're talking about building out this horizontal marketplace of resources, you need kind of the power to match building something like a global brain, right? And that's why we were really excited to bring all these people together, because they are literally just puzzle pieces in solving this future that we're working towards. But so they agreed at the summit to do global compute, which I think is a little bit easier to agree to do, but for Amazon to open up their data sets so that Google can learn from them, and that Google opens theirs so Amazon can learn from them, that's not yet.
So they're figuring it out. And I think things like GDPR, I think that's headed for the US.
But it's crazy because GDPR, that general data and privacy rights, that doesn't, there's no incentive for them to open up. They almost have to see a monetary incentive in order to open up. So there has to be some sort of grand vision of when you do merge, your little vertical is actually going to look like a joke compared to the grand set that you're going to be able to make twice as much off of.
Right.
That would be kind of.
And if you have more data, you can create better models. And the more data that you can create corollaries from, right, and combine your data to find better insights, the better your products can be. So Amazon would love to participate because Amazon would love to target things that you actually want. Like, I think ads are kind of this weird stopgap of like discovery for people and trying to figure out what people want and trying to figure out where the product fits. But if you're able to understand somebody, I mean, we've seen talks where machine learning models after 100 likes can figure you out better than your significant other, right? But imagine doing that for a lifetime, right? Imagine what insights you can find out then. And then you have what begins to start looking like a very predictive world. So there's a model that's observe, learn, predict, and then influence. So if you can create predictive models around a single person, that's where everyone wants to be. Right? If you can make my life easier, take my money, right? And I think that's where people want to be. No one wants to sell somebody something they don't need or want, right? And nobody wants to participate in something that they have kind of regrets or remorse participating.
People don't want to have their package delivered to an incorrect location, then they have to drive to the incorrect location. Ron and I had a 200-foot SDI cable, or two 100-foot SDI cables shipped to H&M in downtown at Union Square during our big World's Fair Nano event. And so we had to go on the Friday before to go to H&M to go get it. So just stuff like this is so funny. People don't want to invest that additional time. They want their life to be simpler. So prediction is what really makes their life more simple. I'm about to run out of almond milk. Oh, great. Now it's shipped to my house the day that I run out. Perfect.
Right.
There's so many examples of this. I'm about to go to my meeting with Dan at his office, and it's going to take me 20 minutes to get there. So the car is waiting outside 22 minutes before the meeting starts.
Correct.
And I'm getting into the car and going in. There's so much beauty in this prediction.
Right. And it helps us reclaim probably the most important resource of all, which is time.
Time.
Yeah, which is cool. So, going back to why these big companies will want to participate, because if they don't, no one will use them. They won't be appealing anymore. They won't have an advantage by not participating, right? The advantage now becomes participating, which will allow them to concentrate on things that matter, which are experiences and the technology that goes to provide those new experiences. So that's kind of like the big vision, right?
And that's why they have to get involved.
Right.
So, especially with these millennials and the Gen Zers,
the millennials,
there's no way that you're going to get millennials and Gen Zers. No, I think really no matter how much value that you propose to them and that they get from you, if you're not under the same general data and privacy rights as other organizations are.
I think the tide is turning.
Yeah.
I really do think that there are more and more people that are becoming aware of the power of data, the value of data, and are looking to figure out, okay, if there's these large companies that can create these very impactful, very powerful models around who we are, what we enjoy, well, what else can we do that furthers and benefits mankind, humankind as a whole? And I think that's kind of, we're starting to see that message come out. And so it won't just be something that you'd like to participate in. I think it'll become an imperative that you participate in this because it means something good for everyone simultaneously.
Yep.
And that's just talking about the data and talking about the research. We're not even getting into what programmatic access to this means and like how that unlocks this whole new AI economy, and then what even AI means in the grand scheme of humanity and its place in the world or the universe.
This has been episode 1. We'll be back with episode 2 in 2 weeks. We'll chunk this up into sessions.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah. What are we missing out of the equation? You just mentioned a couple of them. Let's talk about those.
I'll talk about a few pretty quickly, and it comes back to the philosophy of why I'm building this, right? It's like it satisfies so many things simultaneously, where it's great for humanity. It's the only way forward in some respects, and it unlocks kind of these new questions that we can ask. But simultaneously, it also provides the conduit for building autonomous artificial intelligence that can start helping us ask and answer questions about the world around us. And I have a very different view of what AI will become and how it fits in our lives. And I look at it as the codex between disparate systems, so different systems.
That's cool. A lot of people think about it in a single way of helping me in a single part of life, then a different AI in a different part of life, but the actual communication between those two verticals.
Right. That's magical. That's when things start moving towards like not just like me and the things around me, but me and the things around me and how I understand both myself and those things relative to everything else in the world. And I think it's really kind of the ingredient necessary for evolution.
Data sets to talk to, the open data sets?
Open data sets and the artificial intelligence that goes to find these insights.
Yes.
I was working on a concept called proof of insight, where we're using consensus and autonomous research laboratories. I mean, so my background is as a scientist, and I think, taking out humans out of the equation, while we are good at some of these things, I think it's necessary, right, to find...
Because we're biased?
Yes.
Yeah.
To find science and the instructions. So if you look at science is looking for observations to kind of quantify and qualify the working world and the instructions within the universe.
There's been so many smart people that have sat in the chair right there that have said that they don't want the human out of the loop. I love and appreciate how you want the human out of the loop.
I think for some things it's necessary. I don't think that they shouldn't be able to be in the loop, but if they are in the loop, then their work should be checked.
So you're going into objectivity and you're going into the scientific method right there.
Right.
So you really want these open data sets to have, for us to be analyzing them, to train algorithms that can analyze them, and then in a non-biased way as possible, and then for it to learn over time across these data sets and make insights and predictions into our lives.
I think it is super important that we figure out systems to create knowledge that matters. and knowledge that isn't influenced or biased in any particular way.
Yep.
Representative knowledge. And then how do we catalog that and store and retrieve that in ways where we can leverage that knowledge to grow new systems, right? And I think that this is kind of like, so to talk like blue sky about these things, about how we can build AIs that discover natural systems that we can't observe because we are naturally inclined to have some blind spots because we are these organisms. I think it matters so much that we allow artificial intelligence to do what it's good at, which is not being human, to help us to learn how to be more human and understand what it means to be human within this system, within the universe. It strikes me as like the most magic place possible, you know? Because if we know about ourselves truly, then I think that's the end of things like war and things like hate and, you know, a new age of love and appreciation and discovery.
We've had a lot of people also come in here and talk about love and connection and peace and a new era of humanity and all these.
I'm hitting on all the topics.
Yeah, but also it's crazy that they come in here with the intention of sharing their ideas without the in a different way than you are. You're doing it in a very, you think that we're going to get there with the power of things like decentralized AI networks. Mm-hmm. And I think that we will absolutely get there with that power. I think that will provide us with some insight into peace and more collective and progressive thoughts. And then I think other things like meditation and spirituality can get us there. I think that other things like human connectivity and just human touch get us there. There's a lot of different things that get us there, but yeah.
I don't think that it's one or the other, right?
It's all together.
I think the more we discover the truth, the more we can start participating in the truth.
And so, what was the main like pillar of the decentralized AI network? What is the thing that most people are using it for right now? Access control?
So access control and the marketplace.
And the horizontal marketplace.
Right.
Those are the two main pillars. Right. Okay.
So we have companies talking to us about how they can help provide the infrastructure for distributed compute, how, you know, there's whole telecom companies that are talking to us that are concerned about IoT, that are concerned about their data, and that are concerned about how to leverage a network like this to participate, because they're already thinking globally. They're telecom companies that literally connect the world already, right? And they're thinking, okay, we have the infrastructure for this. How do we build something that enables us to leverage that infrastructure in new and exciting and insightful ways? And so the conversations are already here. It's not a matter of when. I mean, the marketplace is built. We're already starting to build the wallets and how people participate on the network. We're already starting to talk about companies who want to participate in the ecosystem with, I mean, ginormous resources. So yeah, it's coming.
So, okay, so we have access control, we have horizontal marketplaces, and the companies that are coming to you, a lot of them are asking you about how they can take their...
So how they can participate in contributing data, how they can leverage data in new and exciting ways. So that's been the first concept. I can't go in and talk about like, oh, well, once you decode the instructions of the universe, right, then mankind and every person and being inside of it will find love. Great. But first, you need to build up these AI economies, right? You need to leverage these resources to kind of get, it's like steering a giant boat. You have to start somewhere and start small, and it's about the data and how people can get access to the data and creating this marketplace, performing contract fulfillment, event-driven networks where you have everyone across the globe being able to listen to delegated events of like, someone needs this kind of data or this kind of resource, right? And so that's very practical.
Okay.
That's a very practical first step to saying, okay, now we're going to start building in some AI components that have agency over these resources, that can start contracting with one another and optimizing paths through that network, and giving them their ability to create their own new emergent economies inside of this network. And those are all very easy to understand things. And then
you.
Well, I guess so. You know, I've been thinking about it for so long. It's like, it's been a wild ride. But you know, I think that's kind of the first step. And then you start talking about, okay, well, if you have a network that is able to acquire this data and acquire this knowledge, what do you do with that? How do you build meta models? You know, there's a ton of ways. Like I said, we want to be the platform that enables kind of, these are basically ideas. If you're watching at home, work on this stuff. We have the ability for people, you know, anywhere around the world to create a new kind of machine learning model in some new way that displaces everything in some new and fascinating way, right? That goes to build a better world and has autonomy over, you know, its resources and can transact with other agents across the network. I think that's the beauty of what we start unlocking is democratizing access to really make things cool.
Holy cow! This is big.
It is.
I'm really happy that you're building it into our world and you're doing this with such passion, enthusiasm, and how big is the company now?
So we're actually pretty small still. We're like 7 people. We're looking to hire all the time. So if you're...
Who are you looking to hire?
Awesome hackers, right? I've been programming since I was 10. It would be nice if we got some other cool hackers in.
Yeah.
AI experts. We've been partnering with some research labs that previously worked with Google, OpenAI, and are helping us build proof of concept models for other companies to leverage with their data, things like that. So if you're a data scientist, if you're into big data, if you're into edge computing, distributed compute, machine learning, and AI in general, I think that those are the kind of people that we're looking for to start thinking about this. And by the way, we're not the first people to start thinking about this, right? Yeah. Actually, I would say the whole there's a whole entire sci-fi bookshelf somewhere that's just like this stuff, right? You know, we didn't come up with the idea of ambient intelligence that's been around for a long time. People have been thinking about this in bits and pieces from cybernetics and conversation theory and like all of these things that kind of are converging on this future. We just happen to be at the right place in the right time to kind of start unlocking a lot of these things with, you know, both machine learning, edge computing, all the sensors that we have, Ethereum, like blockchain and crypto. It's like literally the best place and time to be, to see all these things kind of come to fruition. And I imagine it must have been like what early personal computers felt like or early internet felt like. It's just, you're on the verge, right? So.
You mentioned cybernetics. It really goes hand in hand with decentralized AI networks.
It does. When you think about, so Norbert Wiener was the, hopefully I'm pronouncing the last name right, was the father of cybernetics, which is essentially control systems for any engineers out there. And they talk about second order cybernetics. And at one point I tried to use second order IoT, and people were just like, no, please, please don't. Whatever that means, like, just stop. And they were talking about
incoming phone call.
They were talking about second order cybernetics, which are like systems that watch systems, and they were really starting to think of these things in terms of like the precursors to kind of modern AI, right? You have Vannevar Bush that was thinking about knowledge and knowledge repos and storage and retrieval of knowledge, and you just have a bunch of these people that started building out the basis for where we're heading today. And like, we stand on the shoulder of giants. you know, I'm just lucky, I think.
Yeah, likewise am I to have the privilege to sit next to brilliant people that are building the future and discuss with them what exactly is going on. Yeah, this is super insightful. What are we doing on time right now?
Are we expecting a 6 o'clock?
No. What are we doing on time?
An hour into the show.
Okay, and how close are we to 7?
It's 6:31.
Perfect. So we'll take like 15 more, and then we'll get you into the photo, portrait photo. So.
What time is she?
7. Yeah. So we have time. Well, I want to run you through all of our simulation questions, but it's so difficult to get there when what you're building is so exciting. Especially, I can't get over all of these relatable examples. Can you give us like the main? I know it's so hard to come up with like the main example when it's being leveraged for so many different things. But what's like the most applicable one that I'm using today?
I think what this enables is one of the things that I've worked on was God, how do I put this?
Or like if I can rephrase the question, it would be like, which data sets are currently being open sourced to where we're able to analyze and make a prediction into our lives that is really relatable today?
So right now, a really great one and a partner that's coming on, and I won't name a name yet, but genetic data.
Cool.
So genetic data is super cool. I just had my whole genome sequenced.
Great.
It's sub $1,000.
Veritas.
Sub $1,000. Sub $1,000, and you're Veritas is a great service, and I think that there's so much potential there. Have you had your genome sequenced yet? Well, so I got my report in. I'm 25% Native American, by the way. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
My mom didn't even know. That was interesting.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they had a report that was full of insights like that I'm very particular to, or very annoyed by people that chew with their mouths open.
How do they know that?
Right. Apparently there was research done, or that I'm very sensitive to the smell of stinky feet, right?
What?
And so you can map genotype to phenotype to more emergent qualities, right? Like what you prefer, like your preferences, your psychological profile, your predilection towards sweets, like anything.
Whoa.
Right? And imagine that level of insight, right? Over time, you'll be able to create a whole adaptive system. One day you'll be born with bots that know everything about you, know your capacity, know how to teach you, how you learn, will be your best friend, your mentor, and help you reach the potential you want to reach.
Much faster than we live in today's world.
Yep.
Holy cow. So I didn't know that genomic data gave all of those insights.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the more insights we have of all of that omic data, as well as the rest of our lives, the more we can start figuring out and connecting those dots of like, okay, this connects to this phenotype or this genotype, and it's all there. It's all coded inside of us, right?
I'm loving the idea of knowing right at the point of inception of this child that's being born and knowing a lot about it, and then being able to hand it off to a very intelligent bot that can give it valuable insights throughout its life. Because right now a lot of parents fail miserably, and a lot of parents do okay, and some parents do well. But it's very difficult to find outstanding parents. Outstanding parents are really rare, and there are certain benefits that come from falling on your face a lot.
Right.
But at the same time.
But just enough.
Just enough.
Right.
Yeah, not overly.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it so much you give up or die. You want to do it enough where you learn and you're able to continue.
Be
and
more resilient, all this stuff.
Yeah, it makes you stronger.
Stronger, yeah. I'm very fascinated by it. We just had Bina 48 on our show along with Bruce Duncan and Billy Barry, and they're working on Isaac Asimov's New Teachers, and the idea that I can come home to a bot that understands me and how I'm feeling and what I want to learn that evening and walks me through and guides me as my teacher and mentor. I love that. And to have that from birth, and
imagine that world.
Okay, let's run you through this question to start.
Yeah. Okay.
How do we program ethics?
Ethics.
Into all of this?
Yeah, I think. Wow, what a great hard question. Ultimately, I think it comes down to, you know, can we build a system that allows us to it depends on what aspects of ethics we're talking about. If we're talking about personal ethics, and if we're talking about adaptive learning agents that help us grow up and kind of imbue their own philosophies and help shape our view of the world, then we can talk about ethics in that respect, right? The ethics that machines reflect into us, or we can, which inevitably doesn't mean that it's the ethics that the machines hold, but that the ethics that they think we require. So how do we, there's two questions there. How do we guarantee that the machines themselves are ethical? And how do we guarantee that the ethics that we learn by interacting with the machines are things that we would like to imbue ourselves with? That is such a difficult question, because what is good and bad, right?
Yeah.
And relative to who we are, what is truth, right? Because you need truth to understand what is good and bad, right? And so you can't just decide what is good and bad without knowing the truth. So I think you need to build a system that can understand the truth before it can decide what is good and bad. But to decide what is good and bad for any particular system that is alive in the universe, it must first understand perhaps the intent of the universe, which is difficult. I would say very difficult. So ethics ultimately is something that is unknown and only relative to the systems that are talking about it.
Okay, so let's lead that into our next question, because if the ethics need to be guided by the universe, then
I know that sounds
or
super
the
weird.
meaning and the purpose.
Correct.
Okay, so then what is the meaning and purpose of life or the universe?
Oh, that no one knows. And I use the analogy, I mean, to even begin thinking about the purpose of something that grand is like a vacuum trying to read Shakespeare. We just don't have the faculties to even begin to understand what that could quite possibly be.
Give me your best approximation.
Some people said the universe's objective is to create more entropy, you know. So
Create more disorder?
yeah, which is fascinating because gestation creates order, right?
Gestation creates order.
Sure. So to create a human being or to create another life is a collection of order, right?
It is, but then it also is disorder, is it not, as well? It is a collection of order.
It is a collection
Okay.
to create an ordered system that then goes on to create perhaps disorder.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And maybe that's the universe saying, "Oh, I have enough capacity to build these."
Additional beats of order that create even more
Right.
disorder.
Correct. Right. So maybe we're just that right now, but I don't know. That's just one idea.
How about on our rock? Or go ahead. Yeah.
But I do think, and this is kind of, I do think that it is perhaps our purpose to build AI. Yeah, I know. And I'll get into that. Because philosophically speaking, or just observationally speaking, humankind is very good at identifying systems, modeling those systems, and then building tools to leverage those models to create efficiencies out of the systems, right? And we realize that that model is itself a system, right? And we can model that, which is what we've done by creating a system, which is a tool, like computers and calculators and things, kind of do what man does, right? Mankind does. We then created AI. We then created AI because AI can then start to accomplish some of these tasks, right? Similar to how we kind of observe the world, right? And ultimately, providing some intelligence that can go to participate in the universe in this way is it almost feels like, because we can, perhaps might mean it is meant to be, which is weird, that we engage in a system that has these instructions that facilitates us, in its system, and we feel obligated to create this thing, right?
And it's not just about the efficiencies, but also about the eradication of suffering.
Right, and it's also about discovery, exploration, understanding, and so perhaps the universe has created everything inside of it to facilitate this next phase, which will help everything else inside of it understand themselves.
Yeah, well said. All right, and then how about, what is one thing that you believe to be true that you think nobody else believes to be true?
Well, every year there's a new thing that I have not heard people say that it is part of our evolution and our purpose to build AI. Maybe I need to talk to more people.
I agree. I don't hear that often. Yeah, very rarely actually do I hear that.
Yeah. Previously, I would say that my view on AI is about artificial intelligence connecting disparate systems and acting as a codex between it. So one day I said we could talk to the bees and we can understand, I would say talk to the stars because it's more fantastical, but
the bees are right here. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and things like that. And I think those were the two big things that I would say that people are like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But now that people have built kind of, deep learning, machine learning models to talk to dolphins, it doesn't seem that crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
I would agree with you on the latter. I think that is definitely a very, very rare perspective of being able to talk, like the panpsychist perspective, to be able to talk to all other things that have even a couple neurons in them, to tap into the global consciousness. And then